And so I would say, one, take it a day at a time.
Right.
When you are serving God, you just need to serve God today.
Yeah.
All you need to do is answer the call of God today. I'd say, one, take it small. You don't. Sometimes the future is too overwhelming. Often it is.
Yeah.
Take today. I would say, number one, keep it small, just one day at a time. Two, I would say, really learn how to walk with God.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Lighthouse podcast. This is episode 4. We thank you so much for joining us today. Today, we are very blessed to have a very special guest join us today. We'll get more into who he is. But first, I would just like to address the elephant in the room, as you can see, which is me. For whatever reason, I feel I got an allergic reaction to something. So maybe this episode you might want to listen more than watch, while I'll try to angle myself in a way, or maybe just edit it out afterwards. So if you're seeing me, then okay. But yeah, I'll try to see how that goes. But yeah, just wanted to get out that of the way. I'm fine. I know we live in a very controversial time, but this is Marvin. It's not a clone. I'm not a clone of any kind. So so yeah, we're just looking forward to what God will do this episode, and then want to make it an excuse to cancel because we only have our brother here for a very short time. He's actually visiting to preach, one of the main preachers for our missions conference going on at our church right now. So this is Pastor Robert Woodard, and he will introduce himself as well, and where he's from, and all these things we would get into, right? But yeah, thank you so much for joining us today, and we just pray that this episode will be a blessing to you, and we'll see how God takes it and leads on this episode, right? So thank you so much. Pastor Rob, it's good to have you join us here today, Pastor.
Hey, thanks for having me, Marvin.
Yes, man.
Michael.
So I know you was... Oh, I forgot to mention this is Michael again, co-hosting with me.
The co-host.
Co-hosting with me today. So we'll see how God leads, right? So yes, and we know Pastor Rob for some time, so it's good to see you again. Good to have you come and visit us to preach our missions conference. But first, as we get started today, if you want to give a introduction of who you are, where you're from, and what God has called you to do in those things. And we could get into your testimony and so on afterwards.
Yeah, so Robert Woodard. Currently, I'm assistant pastor up at Victory Baptist Church in Roseburg, Oregon. Recently left the mission field of Guyana after my wife had some health complications. I got to leave behind a church, New Life Baptist Church. And so right now we're trying to get her better and just jumping in a lot of, helping start a lot of awesome ministries there at Victory Baptist Church while we get her better.
All right, nice. So you said you left the mission field of Guyana, so you were a missionary to Guyana.
Correct, yes, sir.
Cool. And unfortunately, as you mentioned, you had to leave for health issues with your wife.
Yeah.
So we can get into that later on. But how long have you been back in Oregon? Since how long?
I moved from mission field of Guyana back in October of 2024, so like a little over a year and a couple months.
Okay.
In Oregon full time.
So you're there at your home church, or you're...
Yeah, this is the church I was originally grew up in.
Yeah.
The church my pastor ordained me, sent me out as a missionary.
Nice.
Though that pastor Clint Cavanis, he passed away a couple years ago, and so the youth pastor there, a good friend of mine, a dear friend of mine, has stepped up.
Yeah.
Young in the ministry, but doing a tremendous job. God's given him a lot of wisdom. He's got a lot of leadership experience from out in the world, and he's using that.
Nice. So you grew up in a Christian home?
I did, yes. Yeah.
Your dad was a pastor, as you said, growing up, or no?
Yeah, so my great-grandpa was a deacon in the Southern Baptist Church, and then my grandpa is still pastoring a tiny little Southern Baptist church in Texas. So my dad grew up a Southern Baptist. Yeah. Then he moved for work to the Trinity area of Dallas, Texas, so massive metroplex, and looking for a church. The only church that was open late enough for him to finish work and still make it a church was Trinity Baptist Church. So they showed up there, and it was the first time they ever went to Independent Baptist Church.
Wow. And
through that, my dad was actually led to the Lord. Through that, he went to Bible college. He would eventually move to Oregon following my pastor, who was at that church, Pastor Clint Cavanis, and he'd eventually go up to Roseburg, Oregon, like 20 years ago or more.
So that was before you were born?
That was before I was born, yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So how much brothers and sisters you have in your family?
A decent-sized family. Not as big as my friend in Guyana with 9 kids. I think a tenth of the way. It's like your Ibrahim. But there was 5 of us.
Oh, okay, 5 of us. So as growing up, you said you had that influence of Christianity, going to church. You know, the
best heritage I could ever ask for.
So nice. So if you could get into a bit of your salvation testimony. I know, obviously, once you're born in a Christian home doesn't mean you're saved. You need to come to that point and place in your life where you personally accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, right? So not being born in a Christian home means you're saved. So if you can get into how did you got saved, your testimony of when you got saved as a growing up in a Christian home, how that was, when you kind of got reverence of God or understanding of God that you needed a Savior. Yeah, so if you could just get into your testimony a bit.
Yeah, so obviously being born in a Christian home doesn't make you Christ,
right.
Or Christian, doesn't give you Christ, but exposes you to Christ at a young age, and I was very thankful for that. And I mean, from my earliest, memories, I was in church hearing the gospel, but it wasn't until I was about 7 years old on a Wednesday night, Missionary, of all things, came through and preached. And it's kind of a funny story. My dad had been working with me quite a bit at that time. I think my brother had been led Lord at 5. And so getting kind of concerned because I was already 7. And I was concerned with everything but Christ, unfortunately, until that night. And my dad had thought I'd raised my hand. I hadn't. I'd been listening, but I hadn't raised my hand. He went down to the front and started talking to me. That talk didn't finish there, but we ended up going home to our house, and I remember the big recliner my dad talked to me on, and then I kind of fully started understanding, like, man, I need Christ for me. It's not good enough just for my dad. And I remember to this day, I don't remember much of about 7, but I remember kneeling down at that big recliner and accepting Christ. And I remember the joy of when I just kind of let go and I knew where I was headed, and I let go of my sin and asked Christ to save me. And I remember even jumping up and being able to call my pastor and tell him. I remember that phone call. I remember calling up my granny back in Texas and telling her. And yeah, it changed my direction, changed my life.
Nice.
So when did God give you that? God called you to preach. Was it before you had went to Bible college? Was it during Bible college?
That's a good question. I'd love to tell you at 7 years old, I just started fully serving God. I had a best friend at that time, Caleb Cavanis. He was like around 9, I think, when God called him to the mission field. Ariana, I think God called her, to missions at a very young age. Not me. I kind of just went and did my own thing for a lot of years. It wasn't until I was about 13 that I started getting serious about things of God at camp. God really got a hold of my attention in a deep way, where I really didn't care much for living right or doing right. I would we were homeschooled, but I would constantly try to cheat and steal and play and do everything but I was supposed to do. And at summer camp when I was 13 years old, man, the fear of God came in my life, and I realized I was messing up my life, and that's when I surrendered. Right. But I didn't get called to preach. I had a heart for God.
At 13 years, you said?
At 13 years old, that's when I surrendered for the first time, and just jumped into everything I could in high school, but still wasn't called to preach.
Right.
But I felt a burden to do something for God, and I figured, hey, I can do something. So I went off to Bible college, still without a call to preach. I started pastoral theology, not because I thought God had called me to preach, but it seemed to have the best tools to be able to assist a pastor, at least. And it was between my sophomore and junior year, I was taking our youth group back in Oregon to that same youth camp where I'd surrendered to God. And I remember the weeks leading up to it, I was really concerned with getting my heart right, because I didn't want to be the reason one of our young people couldn't get right with God. I remember being extremely burdened about that. And even as I was praying for the young people, I just been really trying to. I think often we say we're right with God, and what that means is we've kind of done a quick glance inside and then said, "Oh yeah, I good." But we really haven't done that deep seeking to say I'm thoroughly right with God. But I remember around that time, I was trying to get as thoroughly right as I possibly could. And it was on a Wednesday night, Dr. Getch got up and preached. And it wasn't even during the preaching. It was afterwards. It was fantastic preaching. God worked on our hearts. It was afterwards, walking from the preaching up to like half a mile away where our camp was, way up the hill on this mountain. I remember walking up there and just I can't even explain it without a shred of doubt. The Holy Spirit spoke to my heart, like, this is what I've called you to do. I've called you to preach. And I went back and just opened up my Bible and started reading Philippians. I loved Philippians at the time. And that's when God gave me the verse 13, 14, "Brethren, I count not myself to have apprehended, but this one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind and reaching forth into those things which are before, I press towards the mark for the prize of the high calling of God in Christ Jesus." Because I think when God calls you to preach, he really's got to humble you. He's really got to make you realize how much the calling to preach is really the calling to give yourself fully to God. Those verses are burned in my head and my heart that night. So
I kind of resonated a little bit with what you said, how you grew up in a Christian home and so on. And then, as you said, only at the camp is when you really started to surrender your life
Yeah.
to God and so on.
Yeah.
It is something that usually happens with people who come from a Christian home. I know Michael came from a Christian home.
Yeah.
Because you grew up in church, you hear all these stories, you know, you just get accustomed to going through the motions, like
Yeah.
doing these things as like a duty. But as you mentioned, like at some point, as long as you get saved, God will have a point where he like gives you that calling or gives you that opportunity to get serious for him, and it's up to you at that point if you will heed to that calling or heed to that and give in to God or surrender to God. So I mean that's a major thing, because so many times you see people who in church and they're just going through the motions, but God has a specific plan, a specific purpose for everyone. And it's up to us really if we would, you know, be willing to hear from God, be willing to surrender, be willing to tune into what he might be calling us to do.
Well, I think youth camp is one of the
I was
final
not gonna say that.
is the final bastions or the final places of what used to happen at old time revivals.
Right.
Because growing up in a Christian home, often the voice of God was as much the voice of pastor or your parents.
Yeah.
And so you really hadn't learned to listen to God for yourself. And something about camp where you get all distractions away and preaching day after day, it's a great catalyst for a young person to start responding to this Holy Spirit inside of them. And it can be taught before then, but so often that's a place where everything's quiet enough where you really start listening and responding to God for yourself. And I think that's what used to happen in revivals, when they would take 7, 10, 15, 20 days, weeks and weeks, where they were focused just on God's word.
Yeah, block
and
out
so
the
the Holy
distractions.
Spirit is really able to start speaking.
Yeah.
So
at what age did you go to Bible college then?
18. I finished homeschooling about half a year early. So I
Right.
finished around December when I was 17, and I just worked my rear end off trying to save up money. I knew how expensive college was. Bought a computer, was able to save up enough to pay my first bills, and I went right after I turned 18 that fall. So.
And so at 18 you went. So you kind of funded college on your own.
I would say 100% on my own, but that's not really true.
Yeah.
You know, my parents didn't pay for it, but I certainly prayed, and there was people who did help
helped,
throughout the way, and some of them I don't even know. There was times money would appear in my account, and I have no idea to this day who sent it.
Wow. Huh.
But I worked my rear end off at college, so I worked 2 and 3 jobs often. Yeah.
And in college, did you work as well while you were going
absolutely.
to college? Okay.
Yeah.
So
sometimes 60 hours a week, 70 hours a week.
Ooh. What college?
But I
did
was
you go
younger
to?
back then, so I could handle it.
Well, I've seen you active in on the mission field in Guyana. I think you are very active in general. So, what college did you go to?
So I had the privilege of going to Golden State Baptist College,
Right.
Which is a ministry of North Valley Baptist Church,
Yeah.
underneath Dr. or Pastor Jack Treber. And I will say to this day,
Very good church.
that I appreciate Dr. Treber. I appreciate his spirit. One of my
Yeah.
favorite classes were, of course, the preacher classes, where preachers would come in from around California and teach. But there was one class where Pastor Treber, after every chapel, that was Pastor Treber's class for 4 years, and he really just shared his heart and his philosophy of ministry, and those were invaluable times.
Yeah.
The Bible college you go to will completely the philosophy you get will be completely dependent upon the man who's in charge of it. You don't go to a Bible college to get a system up. Really, what you're doing is going to learn from the man of God who's over it. So if you're going to a Bible college and there's not a man of God in charge of it, run.
So did you in going to Bible college? Well, that would be a 4-year period, right? For Bible
I
college.
did. I think Bible college probably suits different people for different periods, but for me, I went to finish. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So in going to Bible college, did you go with the desire? Okay, I know I'm called to be a missionary. You just feel like I was called to preach.
Yeah. When I first went to Bible college, I just knew I wanted to serve God, but I
Right.
didn't have a calling, and I prayed for a calling, and all that. But my pastor always told me, he's like, "Hey, calling God's clear. You'll know when He calls." And he hadn't at that point, so I just said, "God, I'll serve however you want me to." And so I went with the desire to serve Him, but at that point, I didn't know what He wanted.
You just was willing to just go back in your church or preach
or
whatever.
just do whatever, or even if anything.
So okay, so when did you? I will get into how you actually found the call for that specific country, but when did you get the call, or when did you feel the call that God was calling you to mission specifically, then to be a missionary?
Yeah, so after you called me to preach, man, I was fired up for America. I really, you've got grand ideas as a Bible college student, even if they're not always rooted in reality or the will of God. Sometimes they're more about our ambition than the will of God. But I remember thinking I would love to be an evangelist or go
Yeah.
start a church. I was willing
Right.
to do anything. I thought even if I need to go to the back of side of nowhere and just start a church, I'd love to do that. Or just wake church up in America, you know. And it's funny enough. I remember having a conversation with Ariana. She first time I met her was my junior year, very first day on a Saturday. And she just got yanked into the room where my bus was meeting. Basically,
Right.
the first Saturday of the year, you get to go choose which bus route you're going to be a part of. 10
Right.
bus routes, 10 captains. I
Yeah.
was one of the captains of bus route 26. Josiah Goddard, who's coming here as a missionary, was one of my
Yeah.
bus workers. And so she got yanked into there. But later that semester, we weren't talking or anything at this point. I was chatting with her and another young lady and a couple of our friends. And I told her, she asked me what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I said, I want to be evangelist. I want to be a revival, bless God.
Yeah, yeah.
I've been reading about Billy Sunday and D.L. Moody. And I remember her looking at me and she said, well, I'm sorry. I thought, excuse me? What? I was pretty ticked off. I remember going back up to my Bible college dorm room, kind of ticked off, like, who does this girl think she is? But then right after, she's like, I just feel like if the churches in America woke up, we could reach America.
Wow.
And I've carried that to this day because I truly believe we have enough Christians. I'm talking about born again Christians in America. If we would wake up and do what Pastor Carter Sr. said, if we were able to lead one person, Lord, this year and spend 1 year discipling them, or at the end of that year they could lead somebody else to Lord. If you continued that doubling in 33 years, you could reach the world.
For real.
I thought, man, there's enough churches in America where if we just did that for 1 year, you could see tens of thousands of people come to the Lord.
Yeah.
And when she's told that, so that kind of really riled me up, kind of made me angry. So then the next semester, when God would call me to missions, I kept it hidden from her for a couple months. I didn't want her the satisfaction of thinking that that I was
She had a
God,
part to play.
that she had a part of it. That's called pride, young people. Pride. And but you know what? God has a way of exposing things anyway. And
Right.
I talked to Pastor Trieber because God had been working on my heart for several months about missions. And I wrote something down here because I really think the call to preach is one thing. The call to ministry, full-time serving God, is one thing. And I think he directs us. Evangelism, missions, Bible call. There's a lot of different, I think, aspects of being called to preach.
Right.
But specifically the direction for missions came when I really just got a heart for my bus route. And I started seeing the need in our bus route and these kids getting saved and just the mashed up homes and families and thinking, yikes, if this is the condition in America where we've got so many churches, how is the condition around the world? And so I started looking at missionaries. I started collecting like hundreds, a bunch of prayer cards. And I think, man, I don't pray for these missionaries enough.
Right.
So I thought, okay, I'm so busy. What do I do? And I remember putting some above my bed to pray for, and I put some in my car, and I would just cycle through every time I was with us. I started praying for them.
Yeah.
And through praying for those missionaries and through the bus route, God really started burdening my heart. And at that point, I wouldn't even say I was called. At first, I just was burdened. But somewhere in there, God really started calling me to missions. And I remember telling Pastor Trieber in his office that, hey, I really believe God's calling me to missions. And I wasn't going to tell Ariana. I figured I'd tell her a year from then. Pastor Trieber got up during a chapel session and said, I'm so glad God's still calling people to mission field. Robert Woodard's called to missions. And she just looks over at me with a smile on her face. And God knows how to out us. But
Right.
yeah, so
Wow. That is incredible.
that's a long version of a short question.
No, that's good. That's good. It's always good to hear how you woke up to that. So, so then when you called to missions, well, I feel before that we should get into, as you mentioned, Ariana there. So Ariana was obviously a missionary to our country here, Trinidad, and she joined you there at college.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you, maybe we'll get into how you got called specifically to Guyana after you go through, because a lot of the people, apparently a lot of our audience is in a specific boat like me and Michael, where we a lot of single people looking at Michael.
We needed an intervention, God, fasting and praying.
So maybe we'll get into that a bit first. Because you mentioned Ariana. So that's obviously you went to Bible college, single and all these things.
Yeah.
And then you found the one for you at Bible college itself.
So I was single, but not great at mingling. At least not with girls.
Right. So in that time period, did you go to Bible college thinking, okay, well, this is going to happen. I'm going to get, or you just went and see, you know what?
Oh yeah, I certainly hoped that along the way God would find it fit enough to pair me with a woman, because I knew it had to be God. I remember reading in in Proverbs, about the virtuous woman, and I would
Right.
read all these qualifications, and then we had some godly ladies in our church.
Right.
My mom was just a virtuous woman, and a virtuous woman doesn't mean a perfect woman. It means a woman who has many virtues, many giftings,
Right.
and many talents, and many activities she does for her family, for the Lord.
Yeah.
That was my mom. That was my first bus captain in high school. Our pastor's wife was just a fantastic, one of my favorite bus captains. She just loved those kids. Had
Yeah.
such a heart. I remember reading in Proverbs, "Who can find a virtuous woman?" And in my other Bible, the Bible I took to Guyana, my college Bible, I have written, "I can't,
Yeah.
only God can," because I thought, how can I find a girl like this? Because my pastor had always said, you don't marry what you want, you marry who you are.
Right.
And I remember thinking, I'm broken. There's no way I'm gonna be able to find who I want, because I'm looking for this kind of girl and I know who I am. But I remember just thinking, God has got to do this. And so I went to college, and there were some great young ladies I talked to, and there was a couple in specific I'm thinking of I developed a good relationship with, but there was godly ladies, but there's never that spark. And
Right.
I think finding God's will is for a young lady is three parts. I think one is first finding God's will for yourself. If
Yeah.
you're a man and you don't know God's will, you got to be leading yourself spiritually first.
Sure.
I think the second thing is finding a young lady who aligns with you spiritually. So it doesn't just mean does she agree with you biblically, but even philosophically.
Yeah.
Because I was praying at that time, I didn't have like a long list of. I had a friend who said, he had like a list of 25 things he was looking for in a lady. I wasn't that organized. I was like, what are you talking about? I was looking more for, I want a young lady who was humble. I want a young lady who is sweet. I want a young lady who loved people. I remember specifically praying for that. I was like, God, you're calling me to work in the ministry. I need a young lady who loves people, who has a heart for the ministry. And so I was looking more for these character types than it was like, okay, is she 6'2"? I don't even know all those things. But I remember my junior year, I still wasn't really talking to anybody seriously. I talked to some girls, but then just kind of broke it off because.
Yeah.
So with those three, so you need to be seeking God's will. You want a girl who's in God's will and has not just the spiritual things, but the philosophy. But then also, you want a girl that sparks with you chemistry wise. Because obviously we all have a different definition of pretty and of chemistry. But goodness, you need to think that that young lady is the most beautiful thing.
Right.
You need to have that chemistry. You need to be able to get along with her. And so I think there's certainly that you're going to be married to her for the rest of your life. There needs to be those three things. And in the middle is what you're looking for.
Right.
And truthfully, to find, I think, God's will in a woman, you need to leave the choice to Him. What did Miss Elliott say, Elizabeth Elliott? God always leaves His best for those who leave the choice up to Him.
True.
But my pastor had 5 kids, and every single one of them got a good, godly spouse.
Right.
The ladies got a good man. And he said that's because they learned to say no.
Mm-hmm.
I always remember that. They learned to say no.
Right.
Sometimes we say yes to a young lady or a young man who
You just want to get married, or
we just want to get married,
be in a
or we
relationship.
just don't want to be lonely, But I remember my junior year, I went back to college, and my pastor told me, Rob, you're not going to meet your future wife in a prayer meeting in your dorm. Get out and talk to girls.
Yeah.
And so I did. There was another godly missionary girl that people had been telling me to go out on a date. And I took her out on a date. There was no chemistry, zero chemistry.
Yeah.
And this girl was a godly girl, a great philosophy. She ended up marrying a great young man. She's in the ministry to this day. But there's just no chemistry.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, I tried. Okay. Now I'm going to go back to getting busy.
So, but that's the good main thing is that's one of the probably the best places that you could find a good spouse.
Absolutely.
Somebody who is in Bible college willing to serve God as well, give their life to God. So that's one of the good things. And when you, as you said, marriage is permanent. You don't want to get somebody and there's no like come on. So you have to make sure it's somebody
wise.
that you spend the rest of your life with. But and we knew Ariana growing up. She's like basically like a sister to us, and she is very as you mentioned, very
she's a
dedicated,
top shelf girl. And I always say I was a bottom shelf guy, but she came down to marry me, so I'm grateful.
Well, so and God has a way to bring people together for
He
that
does.
specific call and plan He has for you. So that's amazing to hear. And so you said as you was mentioning the testimony of you all being in the bus route. So when did you all start the same time, college, enter the same year and so on?
No. Yeah, so you want to know how I met her?
Yeah.
And when I knew. So I went as an 18-year-old. She would, I think, work here, I think, for a year after she graduated high school.
High school, yeah.
So she came, I think, as a 19 or 20-year-old to Golden State. So I was there 2 years. I finished my freshman, my sophomore year. She came at the same time I was a junior.
Right.
But she was an older freshman at that point. So what happened was we all met in this big chapel, and then people would split to these different bus routes.
Yeah.
And I've been recruiting all week some of these guys trying to get, hey, come join my bus route. Hey, come join my bus route. That was the time I recruited Josiah Goddard.
Yeah.
That's a crazy story. I don't even know if we have time to get into. Basically, the very first activity before college started, I think, or during college maybe, my brother had fallen down and got like knifed by a ice skate blade. A girl had like ran over his arm or his thing. It was a massive gash. Ooh. So I get a call, hey, your brother's in the ER, the emergency room, you better come. Well, it's Josiah who took him there.
Yeah.
And there, I started plugging my bus route, like, man, we need good godly guys, blah, blah, blah. And he came and joined. Anyway, years later, he went on a mission trip with me here. I was in his wedding. Now he's coming back as a missionary. And even the States, I mean, he's active right now. He's going around with some evangelists and staying busy. But they would all come to this room, and Ariana said she was headed to a different bus route, but Ashley Thompson said, hey, I don't want to go in here alone, and yanked her, and they somehow ended up in my bus route. And bus routes are big. You'd have up to 30 workers, because you'd be in a big portion of the city. And I remember going in that room, and I saw her the first day. I mean, she was a pretty girl, and I have eyes. And I remember seeing her. I literally remember seeing her and thinking in my heart, Rob, don't get distracted. We got a job to do here. And I just kind of put it out of my mind. And it wasn't till the next semester where my current secretary was getting married. And was going to join the other guy's bus route, which makes sense. So she was getting married. She was just a fantastic secretary, just a humble young lady. And secretaries there were super important. When you have such a big ministry, you've got 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 kids coming on your bus route. You have to know all of their names, all their emergency contact information, which ones you're picking up, what classrooms they're going to, what age groups they're in, what bus workers were on. And you have to keep this every single week. So the bus secretary wasn't just like somebody who brought candy for the kids. It was a very important, not just for the ministry and organization, but even for protection, for a big ministry like North Valley that's constantly getting people trying to sue them or saying this bus worker did this. When you keep careful records, it's very easy to prove what's going on. So super important, but you also want a godly one. You want somebody that cared about. So she was leaving, and I needed a new secretary. And she's like, hey, I want to start training up Ariana to take over. I said, great. And when she started stepping in, I really got to see her heart. I really got to see, and we started having some great conversations. And pretty quickly I realized I wasn't just looking for a bus secretary, that I was looking for a life secretary as well. And so.
That's good. So that y'all started to be in a relationship or court or date or whatever you would call it. In college or?
So that's a great question. Everybody has different terminologies, for dating, courting, for the biblical method of how do I get to know a girl.
Right.
And I've got my own opinions about how you go about doing all that, but everybody does. So basically what happened is when I started getting interested, I thought, there might be something here. It was the second semester of my junior year. I remember the night where I finally worked up the courage to, I'm gonna talk to her. I'm gonna ask her to grab coffee after service. So I remember after service, waiting around, she was with her friends, and I was trying to catch her alone. I wasn't just gonna walk up to her with all of her friends there and ask her for, because what if she said no? My ego couldn't handle that kind of rejection. I was hopeful that she'd been looking at, noticing me as well after our talks, and that she would say yes. But I remember waiting for her to finish, and I was talking to this one person, and then everybody left, and she was still talking to these girls. And I was talking to this guy, and I looked up, and she was gone. I was like, snap, where'd she go? And I remember kind of rushing to the door. It's a big, big church. And she was already full across the parking lot, about to go in the girls' dorms. And I knew if I didn't work up the courage to do it now, it wasn't going to happen. So I kind of fast ran over there, and probably super awkwardly just said, hey, you want to grab a drink afterwards? And just as I did that, all the girls that she had been talking to came back down. And I don't know all that they do, but there's a lot of giggling and a lot of side eyes and a lot of craziness as they jumped in the car to go run an errand. But then we sat down, we had a conversation, and I said, look, I'm not asking you to date me at this point. I'm just really intrigued, and I would love to get to know you more. She's like, well, you got to talk to my dad.
That's what I was kind of.
And that was pressure. And that was pressure. More pressure than I think I'd ever endured at that age of my life, because I'd heard a lot of stories about her dad.
So, well, we grew up with him as our pastor, and he was a pretty strict guy. So, so that is what I was kind of leading up to, is how that went in terms of, well, obviously he doesn't know who you were. He didn't have.
No, I cold called him. Out of the blue. But I was serious, and a guy who's not willing to talk to a girl's dad. If you can't work up enough courage to do that. Girls run. You need more of a man than that. Yeah, so I think that very next week I called him up, and I still remember that conversation.
Right.
And the very first conversation I had with him, he said, "Look, if you're even interested in talking to my daughter, you need to see where she's from."
Right.
That's my first conversation I ever had
Yeah.
with him. He's like, "You need to take a trip to Trinidad." So
And that's what kind of led to you eventually
going to
visiting him.
Trinidad?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. By the
Nice.
end of that semester, I had my passport ready to go. I had
Okay,
bought my
so the
ticket.
first time you came, you all weren't really.
Oh, we weren't
specific
even fully courting. No.
Right.
No.
Okay. Okay. Well,
But-
we just
but-
thought, yeah.
But before I left that semester, I knew she was
Yeah.
God's will.
Mm-hmm. So she was
Some people
willing to
talk
go
about from
that-
the first moment they saw her. I always thought that was ridiculous. You can't know a girl from the first
Right,
moment
yeah.
you see her. But I'd known her at that point, a full year, and because she's on my bus route. But a full semester, I'd really gotten long conversations, and it was always easy to talk to her and easier to talk to her. Ariana. I mean, she's one of those old soul. She just has a deep. God has really given her the gift of teaching, I would say, and of wisdom.
True.
And I always had such great conversations. It was always easy to discuss ministry with her, and even just heart things. But yeah, so but I bought that ticket without knowing if I could court her,
True.
but willing to take the chance.
Yeah, because I mean, if you got that clarification in your mind, and
it was already at that point that God was directing me toward Guyana. I wasn't certain about it, fully certain, but he had been bringing it up so many different ways.
Okay, so I was thinking that you probably got that call in after you got married, but if it was so then what led you to get in that call in?
Within a month
Guyana?
of feeling I was called to missions, Guyana was brought up to me as an English-speaking country in South America that desperately needed the gospel. Chris Thompson and I would meet just about every night, either over the phone or in our room.
Yeah.
Jonathan Castro, you know him.
Yeah.
He was at my junior senior year. I was in his room. He was the dorm soup,
Right.
or for our basically leader of our whole floor. And every night we'd get together and pray for missions and for our ministries. So
Nice.
every single night, some good prayers. And we just pray through lists of missionaries, list of countries. And Guyana was brought up, and he, said he was a great need for missionaries there. But I'd heard that for so many different countries.
Yeah.
So I thought, whatever. But between then and I think that summer, Guyana just kept coming up over and over and over again.
First brought up to you by Chris Thompson.
The first time I ever heard of Guyana was Chris Thompson.
Right.
2 weeks later, the son of Pastor Trieber got up and preached on a Sunday morning, and he told the story of Jim Jones. I grew up going homeschool, so surely I had read about him, but I hadn't even heard the story.
Right.
And he mentioned Guyana. Here's a country I'd never even heard of before, and within a month, I'm hearing it again. So after I got done coming to Trinidad for the first time, which I show up in Trinidad, and I'm there with one mission. I praise the Lord for missions, but this is a very specific mission trip. And I show up on a Saturday, and at the end of that long day of ministry, my father-in-law just says, "Hey, pack your bags. We're gonna go to Guyana." I said, "What?"
On your first mission trip?
So my first time in Trinidad, he said, "Hey, we're going to fly to Guyana. I've only got 10 days to be here. I want to see sheep, Praise the Lord for Guyana, but I want to see sheep." I was not as spiritually minded in that moment as I should have been. He's like, "Yeah, didn't you say you were interested in Guyana?" I said, "Yes." He's like, "Yeah, well, we're going to fly out tomorrow afternoon after service."
Wow.
I'm just hearing about this,
Yeah.
But I thought, God knows.
Yeah,
so
true.
we went over 2 or 3 days over there. That was my first chance to meet Pastor Zakir Ibrahim, first chance to preach over there, first time I signed somebody's Bible. I didn't feel like I didn't want to.
Right.
But I remember the older preacher there said, when I didn't want to sign the Bible. Oh, afterwards I said I signed the Bible, but afterwards I was telling him, like, look, I don't want to be. I feel like my name has no place in the Word of God. And he said, "Rob, it's not about you."
Yeah. Right.
And I'll always remember that. He's like, "Rob's not about you." He's like,
Yeah,
if a young person can see your signature and think, "Man, I want to go serve God," he's like, "It's not about you, Rob."
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Okay, so all that happened, and then I went to intern for a pastor.
Right.
At the internship in Virginia, we went to a youth camp. Halfway through youth camp, somebody came up to me and said, "Hey, is this keychain yours?" It was a Guyanese flag and the word Guyana keychain.
Wow.
In the
Virginia.
deep South, Virginia. I mean, this is about as southern as it gets. They have a whole service, one of the whole services. No preaching, just people get up and give testimony. I'm talking about full-blown southern, running around in a circle. I mean, I come from the north, so praise the Lord for that kind of ministry. I'm not bashing it by any means, but very different from a culturally, northern guy. And in the middle of it, somebody came up and said, "Hey, is this your keychain to Guyana?"
Wow.
And it was then that I really suspected God was trying to get my attention for Guyana.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then he would confirm it when I graduated. And by then I was very serious about Ariana.
Yeah.
I graduated and got to take, it was supposed to be a 3-month trip to Trinidad and Guyana, and turned into being gone about 8 or 9 months. mostly in Guyana. And that's where God really confirmed
Yeah.
the calling to Guyana.
And you went there at that point for the majority of those months. You were there without Ariana, right?
Yeah, so what happened is I graduated Bible college. At this point, I knew this is God's will.
Leading them.
Man, I was like, bless God, I'm graduated now.
Yeah.
Guyana's where I'm going to go. Let's get married to this girl. Well, I was like at a 10. I'm graduating. Well, she still had another year to go. And so we could tell that we weren't quite at the same level in
Timeline. In
timeline.
A sense, yeah.
But I kind of didn't want to think about that. But right before I came down, I was supposed to work 5 weeks in Trinidad and spend time with she.
Yeah.
And then go down to Guyana. And right before I came, the month before I came, she broke up with me.
Oh boy.
You want to
I
talk about
remember
heartbreak? You want to talk about depression? You want to talk about all of God's plans falling apart? It was. I would say up to that point, it was the most difficult thing I'd ever gone through. I can't even describe the level of heartbreak. And even I started doubting, okay, can I even hear the voice of God? Because I was certain he told me this was the girl. Everything was working out so peachy and so nice. And it was just a massive brick right in the middle of it all. I even remember my pastor, seeing how much it hurt me, said, Rob, you don't have to go to Trinidad first. Just go straight to Guyana. That's what God's calling you. And I said, no, I really feel like I could gain a lot. Jump into the VBS as the culture is so similar. And it was brutal, though. I kid you not, it was brutal.
I remember that camp
every
specifically.
night. It was brutal. But I think I needed it because I needed to know that the calling to Guyana was regardless if Ariana was my wife, regardless if I had a wife, regardless if there was my father-in-law was going to be right over there in Trinidad. I think, and now looking back at with everything that's happened, I'm very grateful that God confirmed that calling outside of anybody else. So.
Because you were planning to stay for only a couple of months in Guyana.
Yeah, I was just supposed to be just under 2 months in Guyana.
What made you stay a little longer?
I loved it. I couldn't leave.
Did you work with just one church, or it was multiple churches, like just going all over the place?
Yeah. So my pastor, Pastor Clint Cavness, was really the one who birthed the idea of if you're called to a mission field, you're still single, go take a long-term trip there. He said, it'll be a time where you're the least tied down. When he said tied down, I mean, you won't have a family. It's so much harder to travel with a family and young kids and a ministry. True. He said, this might be a great time to go travel the whole country. Pray for where God would have you start a church. Start getting past the honeymoon stage of, mission field, Jim Elliott, we're going to go, and see a little bit of the reality of the mission field and get to trust God more. And he was the fan of taking a 3-month trip. So my best friend Caleb, who went to Congo, took a 3-month trip, and then he encouraged me to. Now I know several churches that encourage their young people to go work with a missionary, go work with a national pastor. So I first flew directly into Pastor Runyon's ministry there in the interior, worked with him. Then God opened the door. Well, then I came out, worked with Zakir. And then right at the end of what was supposed to be my time there, I called up my pastor and said, look, I found out about Brother Owens up here. I'd love to go back to the jungle. I don't think God's done with me in Guyana. Right. He's like, then stay longer. I'm really grateful to pastor who's just like, look, you need to find God's will and you need to pursue it. He really taught us to listen to God for ourselves. Well, the interesting thing is my visa was up and I was so broke.
I
was so broke. So this was, I was so broke. And all the money that I thought, even the money I'd raised to go to there, it wasn't enough. I should have raised more, but that's okay. God provided. But right when it was up, Pastor James out of the blue called me up and said, hey, would you come? We're having a revival. Come preach with us. What he meant is, would you come be the baby 5-minute preacher before the real preachers got up? I knew that, and I always appreciated the opportunity, and I knew I needed to reset my visa. So I knew it would take care of resetting my visa, and he was going to pay for the ticket because I didn't have enough money to pay for the ticket. I didn't tell him that, but he flew me over, and it was during that flight over where Ariana and I actually got back together. So, and she would show me a picture later. She would constantly check my WhatsApp status because I meant that much to her. And in one of them, I took a picture with one of the assistant pastors in that jungle village where Dean Runyon is, where now Blake Muscott is taking work. Go Blake Muscott. You guys want to take a good mission trip, go visit Blake Muscott in Port Kaituma, just a couple miles from where Jim Jones did that horrific act in a great gospel church there. Excited what's going to happen. But she said on my WhatsApp status, I still have this picture, there was me and the assistant pastor and his wife, and right behind us was a container. And on the container it said, return to Trinidad. I kid you not. And so for her, she said that was a sign from God for her. Who knows and everything. But when we came back, I remember really just torn up because I saw her obviously there and thinking, you know,
What is
I
gonna
still
happen?
feel like feel like this is God's will, but the door is shut. You know, as far as I know, it's still shut. And I remember my father-in-law, you know, taking me somewhere at the end of it. And he's not he's not going to talk about emotions. You know, you know, he's not gonna talk about that kind of stuff. But at the end of that drive, he said, "So, you know, are you talking to anybody?" And I said, "No, sir." And he's like, "Okay." And he's like, "So, what are kind of your prospects out there?"
Yeah.
And I said, "Other than your daughter?" He's like, "Oh, is that still an option?"
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, on my side it is." And he's like, "Oh, good. I just wanted to make sure because on her side it is too. Why don't you talk to her tonight at the revival?"
Wow.
And I thought, "What?" And you know, he doesn't mix. He doesn't want to mix ministry and emotion and all that. He's very straightforward.
Yeah.
I said, "Well, when should I talk to her? Before or after?" He's like, "Why don't you talk to her before?" And then I knew he had been talking to her, and hey, this door might have been. Opened it back up, and he did. And so then when I went back for the rest of the trip, I was less heartbroken and less lonely. So
that's incredible. So after that trip, you did go back to Guyana.
Completely broke,
Wow.
no money, and went back.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So well, fast forward a couple of years, you all got married. Well, how long after that period did you get married and so on? How long did you court for?
Yeah, so maybe to finish up. So when I flew back there, real quick. So I flew back there, and I knew God wanted me there. Didn't have money. My pastor called me up and said, "Hey, you're staying longer. Can we send you some money?" Literally the week after I got back. And it was just interesting. You just take one step. Sometimes we want everything worked out. We want all the puzzle pieces together, and often the next puzzle piece doesn't show up till you said yes to the one behind you. Yeah. But anyway, what were you asking?
No, so after after you, well, basically we could fast forward to that a bit. So that you all basically got married. How long after that period?
So that would have been in 2017, the same year I graduated. I went to Trinidad and Guyana. The next year, 2018, is when I would have proposed to her. So we started courting then. About a year later, in October, at Capital City's missions conference, I took her to downtown. Well, not downtown. There's a river in Austin where you can kind of see the skyline in the back and a beautiful river, nice walkway. I asked her to be a Miss Woodard, Mrs. Nice. Woodard, and fortunately she said yes. So that would have been a year after that, and then we set the wedding for March. Right. So October to March would have been November, December. So about 5 months, 4 and a half, 5 months. At Capital City Baptist Church, which was such a beautiful place to have a wedding.
And I know some of the our people went over for the wedding and so on. So we saw it, and it was a blessing to witness. Because I mean,
it was a blessing for me to witness too. Let me tell you,
no, blessing to witness because I mean we grew up with Ariana's like from
best day of my life.
We grew up with her from like seeing her as a child. So you know that step, seeing anyone like we grew up with got married, do things right, in the right way, become a missionary.
And so many people jumped in to help us because again, I've been doing mission work all this time. So when I finished up then, got back to my hometown in Oregon in January, I knew I had about 8 months before I was going to get engaged because I already kind of been talking to Brother Hoffmeister, and I knew I needed to shoot a video in Guyana. And I didn't have any money, so I just got back and started working like crazy for that 6, 7, 8 months.
Yeah, but it was a blessing because it's a good testimony as well of somebody waiting on God for the right one, and and
it does take waiting. Man, there's a lot of times of uncertainty in between.
I'm sure, especially when she broke up with you, that period have been rough. Probably just wondering what would be the next step. But so you all got married in March of 2018.
You want to hear the story of how I actually asked her father for her hand in marriage? Yeah, because that was just as terrifying as the talking to the first time. So in between January leaving Guyana, October asking her to marry. I think in the summer I took a trip to Guyana, shot the video, like a deputation video, as a single guy, and then I went to Trinidad with the express and only purpose of asking him to marry Ariana, and he would not give me any time. Wow. He wouldn't give me any time. I knew he was avoiding me. He put me with these people over here. He put me with some people over there. But Kyle Smith was there. He knew I was there, and he knew he was going to talk to me. But he was putting the pressure on me. I could not get him alone for the life of me. And I remember Kyle Smith was a big help in saying, "Look, just give him a chance. Give him a chance. This is a good." So I was thankful to have him on my team. I'm thankful for Pastor Adam Thompson sticking up for me because it's not easy to give away your eldest daughter. It's not
true,
thing, so.
Firstborn as well.
Yeah, but we sat down and he said, "So, when do you want to ask her to marry you?" I was like, "Well, When do you
So
think?
as you sat down, he knew you was going to
Yeah.
come.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's what I'm saying. He knew. He'd been
Yeah.
avoiding me the whole. Not avoiding me. He'd just been keeping me
Yeah.
busy to where I didn't even have a chance
true.
to.
So they knew, no.
And so we sat down, and he said, "So,
That's funny.
when do you want to marry my daughter?" And I said, "Well, yes, sir. Please and thank you. When would be a good time to ask her?" And so I
that's
really
it.
did submit myself to his timeline and his.
Right.
And sometimes that is good, because it does require you to kind of humble yourself.
True.
And to often to find a good girl, you will have a father-in-law who's going to kind of test you a little bit. I don't think that's a
Yeah.
bad thing. I think it's good for young men to
No,
be
it's good.
tested.
That's a main thing, especially if you're looking for somebody who's the right one.
Yeah.
You should be willing.
So
And
they're
if
not
you are the
gonna
right
have a
one-
pushover dad.
Yeah, and if you are the right one for them, you should have the desire to go to the authority and
Yeah.
get permission.
Oh, absolutely. You absolutely should. Yeah, there's no situation in which I would ever talk to a young lady without first talking to her pastor or her dad.
Right.
We do get things so backwards with that.
True.
I think the correct authority structure isn't just right. I think there's safety in it.
Yeah, yeah.
And not just safety in
Saves you.
testimony, and not just safety in doing things the right way and finding out, hey, is this girl really who you think it is? But I
Right.
think even safety from God. I think
Exactly.
God honors when you do it the biblical
Yeah.
way through authority.
Yeah, because as you said, safety, and then you want to make sure you get to know quickly from the right authorities if it's not God's will.
Yeah.
So you move on. So if it's not, if God, her authorities doesn't have that feeling that that's the right one, then move on. If
Yeah.
it's whatever the case might be.
Yeah, so it's interesting for me because my pastor always said, give somebody close to you spiritually in your life veto power
Yeah.
over relationship. And what does that mean? I want to be careful because it is your job to go find out God's will. Absolutely.
Right.
But in the thing of a girl and a guy,
Yeah,
the
you
Bible
could
says these things are too wonderful for me. And one of those things was the way of a man with a maid. Because even as much as you want to approach it spiritually, you need some guide rails and some wise people who know you.
You're right.
And who can look at the situation from the outside. Not that they're going to get in there and act like the Holy Spirit for y'all.
Yeah, but some accountability in a sense.
But some
yeah.
accountability and some
Yeah.
people from the outside who could say, hey, this
Right.
is not looking right. Because, hey, when you're in the middle of that and your heart is thumping,
You don't see it.
your brains do just go out
Yeah.
the window.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I'm thankful 7 years later through all that we've been through, and we've been through a lot, I can look at her with absolute confidence and say, look,
Yeah, it was right.
it was right. But here's the truth. Even if I went to look back and say, man, I don't know if that was God's will back then, it doesn't matter. The second you marry a young lady, that
That
is
is
God's will. We have this idea of a soulmate, like an eternal soulmate. That somewhere out there's a soul that God's ordained before the beginning of time that we're going to connect. But that takes out free will. I think if
Right.
you're going towards God and you're doing right, and there's another girl who's going towards God and
Yeah.
doing right, I think it's God who can put them together.
Yeah.
But then we have free will. What if this guy says, nah, I'm going to go be a gangster. I'm going to go
Right.
to follow a career. But then you've got this godly girl. Oh, I've missed out on God's will for my life because this guy. No. I think
Right.
God can find the next guy
Right.
and God can make it. He can work all things together for our
good.
good. Now, of course, he will foreknow it and all that kind of thing. But I see some of these people, they get kind of weird with it. And I
Yeah.
truly believe if you're doing right, God can bring you
Goes
to
in.
the right person.
I heard somebody explain it as well. If you are somebody, as you said, be the right one before you look for the right one in
Yeah.
a sense too. Is as you get closer to God and this person get closer to God, if God is meant for your paths to come together, as you both get closer to God,
Yeah.
He will bring you all together.
Absolutely.
At that point, and then you all be on the same page then in what
Yeah.
God wants you to do. She'll be willing to go and be a missionary,
Absolutely.
do whatever.
Absolutely.
So you kind of save yourself a lot of the heartache, the troubles, the mistakes when
Yeah.
you at least get the right advice, right, follow the right authorities and those things. So that's a main thing. So after you got married in 2018 of March, you said, well, obviously at that point you all was on your way to Guyana,
Yeah.
but you had to raise support and so on first.
Yes. Yeah.
So how long in terms of raising support, how long did that process take for you to raise support to go Guyana?
Yeah, so we 2019 married March, and I don't recommend this.
Yeah.
I don't. Some pastors said, "Hey, take a couple years and get to know your wife." Some take a year, some take, and we were young, and I was very passionate about getting to Guyana. But it was more than that. I'd really prayed, and I knew I wasn't supposed to go work in a church for a couple years. I just knew, and
Yeah.
I had some opportunities open up, but I knew we need to get busy. But we wanted to take 3 months and kind of have some downtime. That being
Right.
said, the second we finished our honeymoon, we drove straight to a missions conference. We're at a missions conference. Then we
Wow.
took 3 months of downtime in Oregon, and then we went on deputation for the next year and a half. It ended up having to be 2 years because we had to take 3 to 6 months off at Capital City due to
COVID,
COVID,
yeah.
just everything canceled.
Right.
So we literally we were at like 80% at that point.
Yeah.
Just had to wait to finish up the rest of our meetings. But
A
God
rough
bless,
time.
man. I mean, with her
Yeah.
connection, because as a missionary to good churches, with my pastor's connection to churches, with my mission board, with Golden State, the Bible says a good name
Yeah.
is rather be chosen than silver or gold.
Right.
And that is true. And it wasn't my good name.
Yeah.
What I got to do is I got to be fortunate enough to be around people with good names.
Yeah,
I was just
good
building my
reputation.
name. Nobody who knew
Yeah.
it was Robert Woodard, but Clint Cavendish meant something.
Right.
My father-in-law meant something. Pastor Adam Thompson
True.
meant something, and because of their word with these
Yeah.
pastors, it was a big. Yeah, these people who think they're self-built are just full of
Right.
dotishness and nonsense. That's not how anything is built.
Yeah, and then obviously, if those people who have that reputation and
Yeah.
credibility see something in you, that comes with a high recommendation for other churches and so on as well. So that's amazing, because to raise that support and so on, to get that support to go to different mission field, you want to go with a good name, you want to go with a
You
good
do, yeah.
a good start, as you said.
Yes, sir.
And I guess you had a good experience as well, because you was in Ghana for a period of time before
Yes, sir.
that whole thing.
Oh yeah, I've been going to training in Guyana for 10 years.
Yeah, yeah.
10 years. But we would end up moving there in 2021.
Right. So that was what I was going to get to. So after we raised support, you moved to Guyana in 2021. So obviously getting over there. So in terms of the starting a church and so on, when you got into Guyana, did you plan to start a church one time, or you say, okay, I'll work with a church or be a part of a church and learn more? For a
Truthfully,
specific
I really
time?
wanted to work with somebody for a couple of years
Yeah.
in my mind. Fortunately, I had wise counsel who said, hey, go work with somebody,
Right.
but put a time marker on it.
Yeah.
And put it shorter. That way, in case anything goes, when you go to work under somebody, you go to work under them.
Yeah.
You're there to support that person. And so along the way, maybe there's a little bit of philosophy difference or something like that, but you still need to support them, and you still need
Right.
to keep your word. You give them 6 months. So rather than giving them 2 years, just say, hey, I'll give you 6 months. I'll work under you. I will do whatever you want me to do within God's will and God's word
Yeah.
here, but I'm just here to serve under you. And at the end of 6 months, relook at it and see if you do want to do another 6
Right.
months. And so I worked 6 months under Pastor Zakir.
Yeah.
And I'm very, very grateful for the opportunity.
Yeah, he's
to this day,
solid.
Zakir is a dear, dear friend.
Yeah.
Very, very wise man in the ministry.
True.
Has had a long testimony of just faithfulness. Gone
Faithfulness
through a lot of
and
things.
growing.
And growing and wisdom and of just high character.
True.
The situation in Guyana
Yeah.
and finding men who over a long period of time have had high character
Yeah.
and integrity like that, just a dear, dear friend. We actually just got to fly him up to my hometown. He got to meet
Oh,
my
nice.
parents and my pastor last month for our missions
Oh,
conference
yes, I
to
didn't
show
know,
our
yeah.
people this is the effective missions,
yeah.
and here's a church planting national who is getting the work done.
Nice.
Had such a fantastic time
That's
with
great.
him in Missionary.
Yeah, because I was talking to one of the guys that told me he was traveling, but I didn't realize it was.
Yeah,
there
we
even.
were able
That's
to fly
nice.
him up.
Yeah.
Yep.
So in Guyana, so you started after the 6 months, you got into starting your own church, right? And we kind of have an idea of that because we came over for the crusade and started
Yeah,
a church.
we appreciate
That was
y'all coming
incredible.
over and helping. Thank you so
No,
much.
that was amazing experience, just to see that. That's the first time we were so actively, because growing up we kind of was involved in a church starting and so on, but not actually going to different place and see
to a mission field.
put in
For
in
y'all,
the
mission
work.
field.
Yeah. So
Yeah, that's what's pretty amazing because if you're watching the States or out of country, in
Yeah.
America we have the idea that that's the mission field. Well,
Right.
here this is their home base,
Right.
And so,
So,
they got to
yeah.
go to Guyana and minister and start a church on the mission field.
yeah.
And
then-
y'all brought your singers, so y'all were able to add a lot of music, a lot
Yeah.
of altar helpers. You've been doing crusades before,
Right.
so you guys gave us such a massive start for
Yeah.
New Life Baptist Church.
Because it was, as you said, we grew up doing crusades. You maybe help out the next church that started in Trinidad, but that's the first time we actually was a part of something in a different country. And people say it all the time, well, culture, but the difference is so night and day.
It's
And I'm
true.
sure it's between Trinidad and Guyana, we have some similarities, but I'm sure for like a missionary coming from the States, the difference in culture and
It's a
adapting.
very different culture. Yeah.
And not only, as you said, missions, sometimes you take a missions trip, but at the end of it, you're going back home, back to your norms. But actually having to live there and, get accustomed to adjusting your whole lifestyle, everything. It has a big jump. So that's why the importance of making sure that when you go to the mission field is really a calling that,
It
God
has to
has
be.
for you. Yeah.
It has to be.
Yeah, that'll keep you going, realizing that.
No,
No, despite your differences.
Yeah.
With all those years that you've been back and forth in Guyana and coming out, would you say by the time that you started at church, you were mostly accustomed to how people were in Guyana, the culture, way of living and stuff like that?
That's a great question. I think culture is such a complex thing.
Yeah.
So I think I'll probably learn about Guyanese culture for the rest of my life, as God lets me go back and forth. But it gave me a huge head start. So rather than having 1 year of culture under my belt or 6 months starting at church, I had been, I had 6 years. I had been able to build contacts with men of God who knew the culture so much better than myself. My father-in-law, Pastor Zakir, Pastor Shrivnoth, and those were invaluable because as you get into the ministry, there are things that you do not know how to handle. I'm not going to bring up all the situation, but you get when you're just helping people with sin, you get in some crazy situations that are very cultural, and to be able to call up these men and say, "Look, I need help," and be able to make contacts with businessmen. That's the difference between pioneer working and being able to have somebody assist you. The only reason we were able to do so much in such a short time in Guyana was because of the assistance of other Christians.
Right.
The only possible way that church is going and doing well.
So, you just mentioned something that how much you was able to do in such a short time. I mean, at that point, you had no idea that you would have to be called out of Guyana.
No.
But you was able to start a church. So if you could get into that, starting a church, and if whatever you want to say around starting your church, the name of the church, and how long you was able to be at the church before you had to hand it over, I guess.
Yeah, it was a set of madness. So we went to Guyana. We moved there completely. I mean, I plan to be there for the rest of our lives. And without a shred of thought that we'd ever leave. I mean, not even. I remember talking to one missionary who said, keep a plan B, and I was like, wait, no, God's will always be my plan A, wherever that is,
wherever God wants you.
And we got there, had a chance to start a church, had my father-in-law and Charity Baptist say, hey, we'll come send some help. My mission director, Sean Lunde, said, hey, we can come do a medical clinic at the beginning, so we can have a medical morning to get attention. And so what happened was about a month and a half or 2 months before time, I just started, track attacking that place, putting up banners, getting ready for the crusade, doing a lot of work to prepare for it, finding a building to meet in. We ended up using where the crusade was on like a community center grounds, and we ended up putting a couple $1,000s into fixing it up to where we could actually use bringing in sand, putting in toilets and washrooms. All the lights were busted out, and just trying to get it where you could actually use the building again. And we had that crusade. We ended up, I don't know, the term New Life, New Life in Christ. It just always fascinated me, and we named it New Life Baptist Church. We had the crusade and just had a great several hundred every night come out. I think I ended up having a couple hundred contacts to follow up with. In our first service, I think we had 65 show up, and that grew into New Life Baptist Church. So
and you kept running the church after that crusade, the first Sunday after that. Keep going.
We just kept going. We started with a Sunday morning, with a Thursday night. We called it a Christian growth class, which is basically a Wednesday night service. Right. But we took specific topics, almost like a discipleship class, just teaching through the Bible. And the blessing was Zakir would send over a couple people. Nice. We'd be able to open up their Bible. I'd be able to have Zakir come preach because we took an off day. That's why we did a Thursday night instead of a Wednesday night. And so I could also go preach to him and take my people over to him. And then Sunday nights, for the first year, we would take our people and we would go to Zakir's church. But about the first year before we start our Sunday night. That way, our more faithful people would come back on Sunday nights, and we would have 2 and 3 buses consistently. We would take across an hour, sometimes longer with traffic, to Zakir's church, Pastor Zakir, and it was so good for them to see, how do Christian people act, man? What's the future of New Life going to look like? And I think that's a huge impact. I think Zakir's influence on that ministry, and obviously God and Pastor Stepek stepping in, is a huge reason why that church is still doing well.
Yeah, because the main thing as you started the Christian growth class is with newly people that now got saved. So
and we're talking about brand new Christians, people who had never cracked open a Bible. And you're trying to pick them up. You're also trying to disciple them. You're also So when you get done preaching, I'll tell you this: if you're a one-man show with just you and your wife starting a church, man, I'll tell you, if there's any young people burdened about mission, just go help a missionary, especially somebody pioneering. There is so much you can do. We were bus driver, you're janitor when you're starting, you are discipler, you are altar worker, you're also trying to greet the visitors as they leave, and you have to go drop people off. It's madness, but you're put in a position where you got to train people up quick. And very quickly, some young men and older men stepped up, and ladies stepped up, and it really causes the church to step up. So,
and now you have, as you mentioned, Pastor Robert Stepek is there now, took over the church.
Yes.
Which is funny because actually, when we did have the crusade, I remember in the morning we had like a medical team
Yeah.
came and do stuff, and he was actually there.
And Robert Seek was
Yeah,
a part
he
of
was
that.
there.
It's really fascinating how
Yeah.
God works everything out. So when I don't know where if we want to get into
No,
the
so yes,
Ariana
he
situation.
was
Yeah.
there for that, and I remember him saying that he was praying about where God would call him to, and he was thinking about Guyana as well.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. At that point,
Yeah.
it was just a prayer. I don't think at that point.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think at that point he did want to go to Guyana, didn't he?
I can't remember, but
I'm trying to remember. But yeah, he was
Yeah.
in that the crusade and the starting of
yeah,
the church.
and singing and so on
Yep,
for the
that's true.
So yeah, I remember briefly talking to him because just because he was they were originally from Trinidad.
Yeah.
So just in talking to him, he was saying that, but it's so crazy to see how
Yeah.
at the moment
Full
God had you
circle.
to come out.
That's true.
He put him in there in the perfect time.
It's one
ready
of
for it.
the reasons that gave me confidence
Yeah.
that God was actually changing my direction, even if it was for
Yeah.
a short time.
Right.
Because when I started realizing that Ariana wasn't getting better,
Yeah.
churches were willing to give me a full another year
Mhm.
out of country,
Right.
to try to get her better. But I didn't want to have to leave Guyana because my mission board made me, or
Yeah.
because pastors saying, "Hey, what are you doing?" I wanted to make sure my direction was from God. So
Yeah.
if he wanted me to stay in Guyana, I would just take another year to get her better.
Right.
If he was saying, "Look, you need to go get her better. You need to
Mhm.
come. I'm moving you." Then, because he could raise her up in a heartbeat.
Right.
What are we talking about?
Yeah.
There's nothing. There's no health condition out there God couldn't raise up. So if
Yeah.
he's moving us out, it's got to be him. And I spent time fasting, praying, talking to a bunch of mentors. And there was 3 things I needed. And one of them, I said, God, if you're moving out, you've got to have a pastor. I don't believe you would have started church, done all this work, all this amazing things that happened,
Yeah.
all these people invested just to leave a baby church to die.
True.
And he didn't. And
Yeah,
I'm
God.
grateful.
I mean, God
And
builds
we
the church.
put it in his hands. I can say we did not engineer it. I told
Yeah.
Pastor Stepek, I said, look, this has got to be something God's. You need to go. You need to fast. You need to pray. You need to go talk to your
Yeah.
your mission director. Because when you step into a church, you're stepping into problems. No,
Yeah.
I mean, when you step into, and I said, and honestly, I said, you can call it your own church plant. I don't care what you call it, because you're stepping into a baby work.
Yeah.
At that point, I think the church was only like 2 years old.
Yeah.
So it was a baby church, or maybe even a year and a half when he first started coming helping.
Yeah.
I have dad brain right now. So I said, look, this is not an easy thing. You stepping straight into a work on the mission field and say go and work under somebody. That's and he did. He stepped up.
Yeah.
Pastor Robert Cepek stepped up. Pray for them.
Yeah.
Pray for them, because they've got a full work and they're busy.
Yeah.
And Satan has a target on the back of anybody who's doing that kind of work in Guyana. There's
Yeah.
major warfare, major strongholds of Satan in Guyana.
Yeah. But it's so incredible to see the transition, because when I got there, when we was in Ghana, we saw, and when you came here, you would talk about what's going on in Ghana, pray for you and so on, and it was incredible to see your heart for the people and how well you connected. But then, obviously, a new pastor taking it over, a new person taking it over, is important that they continue that same,
Yes, sir.
that same way that the people of the church was accustomed to their pastor, investing in them, being with them. So it's incredible to see how, and I've been able to be there and see and preach for them, spend some time with them. So it's incredible to see how much he is also involved in the country. He really loves the people.
Oh, right.
the
Yeah.
work.
It's always frustrating if you pass over a ministry, to somebody who kind of just gives a halfway into it.
Yeah. He really gives it all.
But
Yeah.
Brother Cepek and Miss Abigail, I mean, they jumped in. They were real with those people. They loved it. In fact, I mean, since he took over, he's got those men preaching. He's got those men leading, singing. He's got a choir
really
started.
taken it.
He's taken it so much farther.
Yeah.
That church is doing well because Pastor Cepek loves those people and prays for him. And he's a real guy.
Yeah.
I mean, the Cepeks have had such a long testimony in the mission
True.
work between the first time I met his mom and dad was in Guyana. They were going to go to Guyana
Right.
before Brother Cepek Sr. passed away. And
Yeah.
of course, Miss Sandra's here. And
yeah.
I mean, you see the realness of the ministry and just their love, their sincere love for God.
The Christian heritage is,
And he's
a
got
big
that.
thing. Yeah.
And he's real. He's not going to be
does.
some flashy preacher.
Yeah.
He is going to
Real
be
humble guy.
real.
Real humble.
And when he gets up and preaches, though,
Yeah.
he can preach
Yeah.
because it comes from a real place in his heart.
Yeah.
He is a fantastic, doing fantastic work there. God's going to use him.
Yeah, and I know your heart, as you said, you're still involved with things in Ghana. But I know you mentioned the story many times before. We kind of know the story, but if you want to get into it a little, because for those who might be looking on, if you're still looking on, thank you so much for watching.
Yeah.
But
I feel like we're pretty far into this.
yeah, so for
Popcorn break when you grab something.
so for those that time frame that you was there, if you want to get into a little bit, what caused you to leave? Because I know that for those that might be a helpful testimony to somebody looking on. You could get into it as much as you want to, or as
Yeah.
little as you want to.
Yeah,
But what kind of
ultimately-
facilitated you all having to leave then?
Yeah, ultimately, it's very brutal to have to leave a mission field. I think
Yeah.
for a lot of reasons. One, pride.
Right.
You go somewhere for life. You're called to life. You don't want to go and you feel like you're quitting.
Yeah.
But one thing I was so thankful, my pastor always taught me, it is the calling of God and it is the will of God. And so once I knew that God was moving us out, I knew I wasn't going to fight against him.
Right.
And if he needed to humble me, there's probably a whole bunch of things to
Yeah.
tell the truth, that my calling was to serve him.
Yeah.
I wanted him to keep me in Guyana, but if he for some reason needed to move me out, that's his prerequisite. So what happened was, what kind of started things off, I think, with Ariana's health was certainly the baby.
Yeah.
We found out we're pregnant, and we were super excited, overjoyed. Everything seemed to be going well. And then 10 weeks before, on a Sunday morning, she woke me up, and she said, Robert, my water broke.
Yeah.
We freaked out. Not on the outside, I didn't, because she always talks about how cool and calm and collected I acted.
she
Not
like
inside.
it, yeah.
Inside, I'm thinking, yike, what is
What's
going
it
on?
mean?
And honestly, there was so much expectation, so much desire. So many times we prayed for our little man. We'd already given him a name.
Right.
You're looking forward to being moms and dad, and we thought we were losing Jason.
Yeah.
And I didn't know where we were having a miscarriage.
Right.
But 10 weeks early, the baby wanted to come. At this time, just three days before, the main bridge
Yeah.
was a metal floating bridge that would open up. It got hit by a barge with a drunk driver and a drunk, not car driver, but a boat driver. Even better, more damage. And it had mashed up, so there's no easy way to get across. And to kind of explain to our listeners, we were across the river from the capital. So any big medical centers, any big shops, all that was across the river, which is not far by distance, just like 10 miles by distance.
Yeah.
But with the bridge, it could take hours to get over there. At certain times, you could only go one way. At certain times, it'd be open and nobody could go. But with it closed, there's no chance of getting across.
Right.
And Sunday is farmers market day for people in the U.S. For here, it's where everybody just brings their produce and bring their shops and wares. And it's a huge day of selling and trading in Georgetown. And so the only way to get across was to go up the river to the coast to the Stelling, which would have been how you get on a boat to go across. Right. It was backed up with traffic all the way almost to where we came out of our driveway because we're on the main road. And I kind of told the story humorously, but I drove like a Guyanese. I was driven on the side of the road. I drove in opposing traffic. I did where it took to get past kilometers of traffic up to the front. Got up to the front. A police officer, of course, was very vexed with me breaking all the laws. And he looked at me and said, "Pull over." And I looked at him until I said, "I don't want to talk to you." I said, "I've got a sick lady here, and I need to talk to you, whoever's in charge of you." And I don't do that. I'm not confrontational with these guys, especially policemen. But I had a different mission that day. I needed to get her to the hospital. But fortunately, he kind of got sober. He realized it was a serious situation. He talked to his sergeant. They let me straight on the Stelling. And there was, amazingly, a parking spot where they kind of reserved for more officials. And he said, "You're going to have to rent a whole boat if you want to go quick." I said, "I will." It was only like 25 or 50 USD. I think 25 USD, which is nothing. I mean, for what I'd be willing to do. And I'll say this, praise the Lord. They always talk about missionaries need a kind of emergency fund for emergencies. Well, I'd use my emergency fund because we were starting a church and all these things. But fortunately, I had some cash that I had withdrawn for an expense coming up.
Right.
And so I had Guyanese in hand, was able to pay that. We get across the river, a taxi picks us up. We rush to the main hospital. I'm not going to name it because I'm not going to bash them on here because I am going to bash them without saying their name. But we show up at the biggest, nicest private hospital, and they wouldn't see us because my wife hadn't done her clinic, her pre-pregnancy checkups and stuff. They said, "Hey, where did she have her pre-checkups?" I said, "What does that matter? This is what's going on. We need help." And they would not see him.
Crazy.
I'll admit, I got pretty vexed.
Yeah.
I didn't yell. I didn't do anything there. Because we had to get her help. So we rushed back. We went to where we got the checkups, which is a much smaller hospital. And we show up at the place, and the lady says, "What's going on?" We explained to her. She's like, "Okay, what do you want to do?" I'm like, "I'm at the hospital. You tell me what to do." "What do you mean?" What do I want to do? I was like, "Can't we get an ultrasound?" "Oh, yeah, that sounds like a good idea." So she's like, "But you have to pay up front." But again, fortunately, I had cash. But I'll say this. I mean, there was just some good people, who once the situation came out, within a short time, Brother Dannett brought up a car for me to use while I was over there. I'll never forget this call too. Pastor Zach here called me up and said, brother, what do you need? Do you need money? Do you need this? And he's like, we can come up there. We can pay for this. We can take care of whatever we need.
Right.
And this is a national pastor. I'm well funded by churches.
Right.
But he was sincere. He was ready to step whatever he needed. I said, Pastor, we're good. Just pray.
Yeah.
And fortunately, Pastor Zach here, last minute, sent somebody over to take over our church and still hold services and everything. Didn't drop a beat on a Sunday. And they had to go up to Stelling, take the boat across, do it, and make a massive sacrifice of their time. But I'll never forget this. So we get there. Finally, they said, oh, yeah, her water's broke.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I started looking up on Google.
Yeah.
And somebody new dad, have no idea what this means. And I look it up and it said the baby needs to be delivered within 24 hours. Some states say 48 hours, but the chance of infection after 24 hours of deadly infection to the baby and the mother, and it listed all these crazy complications could happen if they don't get help. I'm thinking, what on earth? So the nurse asked me, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to be admitted? I said, yes, we want to be admitted. I was like, can't we call the doctor? She's like, well, there's no doctor. There's no gynecologist here. I said, then call the doctor. Anyway, I was like, this is crazy. I'm not at the right place.
Oh, my goodness.
And I looked up if there was any NICUs in the country. So NICU is a neo-intensive care unit, neonatal intensive care unit specifically for, and of course that hospital didn't have one. Back on Zing, the main hospital didn't have one. There was one in the public hospital. But I was no way I was taking Ariana and that baby to the public hospital. In fact, the very next week in the public hospital, a young lady would come in suffering headaches, would pass out. They would do an emergency C-section on her, and both of them would pass away. So there's no way we're taking them to the main one. Okay. Well, we get in there. We get into a pre-room before they're going to get us our room. And I look over and I hear two nurses arguing in our room after being there 10, 15 minutes. And while they were arguing, I looked over and realized they're arguing over who's going to take a brand new baby, to a warming lamp in another room. And I realized there was a deathly quiet baby sitting there the whole time we were there, just chilling on this little metal cabinet with a little blanket underneath it. And I thought, this is not where I want to be.
Oh, my goodness. Especially in emergency time.
Oh, and the amount of crazy things that happened. One of the nurses came in and said, I heard you guys were trying to call in a life flight.
Yeah.
That's good because one of the nurses lost her baby last week here. I was like, don't tell that in front of my wife. What are you doing, man? We're trying to stay sane.
Private hospital, right?
And they weren't giving us any answers. They didn't tell us anything. Like, we had no idea. And there was other things that started happening with Ariana, and there was some... I don't want to be graphic on here, but there's other things that are happening. We're very concerned. The doctors didn't. When I went, we finally got a little room, and I kid you not, when you would go in to take a shower, because we were there for about a day and a half before a jet came in, broke down the life flight jet, and another one had to come. Anyway, it's a whole stressful story. But while there, when you take a shower, the water would run into the middle of the room. Like the AC was dripping on the bed. I had to sleep in front of the door, so every time they came to check her vitals throughout the night, like every hour, I would have to move the bed, check vitals, move it back, try to fall asleep. There's no way we were falling asleep that night. But it felt a lot more refreshing once those medical team got there. It felt like, okay, we could relax a little bit, and they were super awesome. We jumped into a tiny jet, flew to Puerto Rico, refueled, and then up to Houston, where there's a massive medical complex. So that
Thank God he was able to go there, because trying to make things work.
I wasn't going to play around with my son's life.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's
nope.
crazy.
Unfortunately, a plug for BIMI, our mission board. Some people don't like them because they have this massive insurance you have to have if you're out of country, but it's exactly for stuff like this. Yeah. Oh, yeah, trying to take care of the medical bills of all that. Just a life flight to Guyana, South America last minute, and one jet breaks down the next one. I can't imagine how much money. It'd probably be $70,000, $100,000, $150,000, $200,000.
Wow.
USD.
Yeah.
Not
crazy.
TT. So, yes, sir.
So, well, so then that's what facilitated you having to leave in such a short notice. I know you went back and forth.
Oh, yeah, but then we were able to actually come back. We did come back. We had the baby in the States, came back, everything was going well, and then later that summer after her getting back, she just got really sick. Yeah. And, I mean, she's bedridden for months. Really about a month and a half before I realized she's getting worse, not better.
Right.
And had to take her to the U.S. And then for a year and a half, I was kind of back and forth before I passed the church over CPEC. Yeah. So from the beginning of that church, within like 6 months, I was already in and out. So the fact that church is doing so well is a testimony to God, to Pastor Zach here for investing time, people, and for CPEC. The ministry is not a solo operation. It doesn't need to be. Yeah. It doesn't need to be.
And as you said, well, she had those health issues and so on. So thankfully your son is fine. He's
Jason was born healthy. So when we got to the States, when you're at these high intensive care facilities, they
Right.
can keep them in much longer, but they're monitoring. She's hooked up to machines, so they're monitoring her vitals for infection like every several
Yeah.
hours. And so they kept the baby in the oven for a few more weeks,
Yeah.
and then we had him on November 1st.
Right.
Still a preemie, 5 pounds. He was in NICU for only 2 weeks trying to gain weight, and then he's been a healthy little munchkin ever since. I love being a dad.
Yeah. Well, same thing. So thank God everything went good with
Yeah.
that. But what facilitated you having to leave is the health issues of Miss Ariana.
Yeah.
So if you're looking on, just please keep them in prayer, because I know you said Miss Ariana, she has gotten a bit better, but still it's a battle.
So this all started, I think,
ongoingly.
3 years ago? I think
Yeah.
is when her health problems really first started. And for like a year and a half, she was
Yeah.
bedridden. I mean, there
Right.
was times
Wow.
where she even wouldn't be able to sleep for 2-3 days when we're having to move her from the different places, or even just because different health things would keep her up. Like there was so many different complications, a virus she had to get over, some autoimmune markers we were trying to look into.
Right.
And so from a year ago, she is much better than that.
Yeah.
But Ariana today compared to Ariana, you knew growing up,
Right.
is still, I would say she's 50,
difference.
60% of where 100% might be.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, through all that, I've watched that young lady open her Bible through heartache that you've seen, through leaving your country, because she eats, breathes, and sleeps missions.
Yeah.
She had such energy, so much
Yeah.
that was taken away. To where she's bedridden, to where now she can help take care of Jason. I mean, she's making meals. She's able to go to church. Even if her energy can't sit up the whole time, she'll sit out in the foyer or in the car.
Right.
She was able to sing a special for the first
Yeah.
time. So massive progress,
Yeah.
but still we're praying for more progress, because we'd love to jump right back into
Yeah.
full-time ministry.
Yeah, so keep praying for her, especially because
sir.
I mean, these are two people that we know, Pastor Rob and Miss Ariana. It's two people that we know for a very long time, and we can testify that their heart for God, their willingness to serve God. I mean, he's a pastor in his home church right now, as he said, assistant pastor there. So they just, I mean, I've been really blessed by your testimony in those areas where you just kept going no matter what. And then we didn't mention it, but you got into an accident in Guyana. And so many different things.
A head-on collision by a
Yeah,
sand
yeah.
truck.
Yeah, so
And
like so
walked
many
away.
things in that
So
short
thank you for praying.
Yeah, in that short period of time and being there, so many things that you faced, and you still kept going. You still had that desire to keep serving the Lord, keep following my lead. So as you said, you all come very highly recommended, but also I've seen it firsthand where you kept going, you have that desire to serve God, and I mean, it's up to God where He would lead you, but just keep praying for Miss Ariana, and that
And prayer
things would improve.
Prayer works. I remember
Yeah.
going back to Guyana right at the time where my pastor of 25 years passed
Yeah.
away. Within a couple months, my father-in-law had some real crisis moments.
Yeah.
At the same time that was going on, and then a couple months later, Ariana got really sick to where
Yeah.
she couldn't get out of bed.
Wow.
So I remember driving to church, picking up people, feeling the most alone I've ever felt.
Yeah.
And I will always remember Pastor Mark Ibarra. For some reason, he and I have always been. I've always appreciated Pastor Mark Ibarra.
Yeah.
But for some reason, he took a month or two, and every single Sunday he would text me. He's like, "Hey, just want to let you know I'm praying for you, man."
Right.
And I tell you that makes a difference. That
Yeah,
really made a
that
difference to this
encouragement.
day. And I remember also when it happened with Ariana, he called me up in the middle of that and said, "Look, if you need a life flighter out here, I don't know what kind of insurances you guys have. I'll pay to make sure she
Yeah.
gets out of there. You have no idea what that means." And unfortunately, we had good insurance and all that, but I'm very grateful
to
for,
know they have that
for the
support
good
and-
people out
yeah.
there who
Somebody have your back.
who do pray. But yeah, now we're active in our home church. Our pastor's tearing it up. He's a young man in the ministry.
Right.
Our church called him to be the pastor there 2 years ago, and we just started a discipleship program last
Right.
year. We had 150 visitors come through last year, so we're trying to start up a hospitality, basically how to befriend and grow these people. They're so hospitality, discipleship. We're working our growing our Sunday school. He's working on growing our mission. So we had a missions conference for the very first
Yeah.
time this year.
Right.
But a lot going on, even in a small church in Roseburg. So
Yeah.
we're staying active
Staying
where we're
faithful,
at.
yeah.
Yep.
So as we shouldn't be too long again, but one thing specific in all that you have faced, right? In growing up in a church, leading to missions, going to the mission fields, starting a church, all these things that you have experienced, all the things that was just thrown at you as well, in so many different ways that you didn't expect. For somebody who's looking on, let's say a young person or somebody who's looking on who might be feeling God's calling them to something specific, but they're afraid to take that next step, or they're afraid to, really give up their personal dreams and desires to really trust God into what He would lead them to. What is some things that you've learned in your experience or in your journey so far that you could use to encourage somebody who might be looking on and be thinking about things along those lines? Some specific things that may have stood out to you in your journey so far.
Yeah. So when God called me to preach, I mean, I felt so tiny, like how on earth. I remember so many times I'd leave classes at Golden State and just go cry my eyes out in the back room because I thought, all this that they're talking about you need to be for the ministry, there's no way I'm ready for any of that. And so I would say, one, take it a day at a time. Right. When you are serving God, you just need to serve God today. Yeah. All you need to do is answer the call of God today. I'd say, one, take it small. You don't. Sometimes the future is too overwhelming. Often it is. Take today. I would say, number one, keep it small, just one day at a time. Two, I would say, really learn how to walk with God. And what I mean by that is, learn to go take walks and just pour out all that frustration, all that fear to God. Right. Learn to make him your source of that, because that will really grow something. And the third thing is find good mentors. When I mean good mentors, go talk to your pastor. The men of God I've met along the way have shaped and molded me in ways that I remember praying as a young man going to Bible college, God, would you bring me under men who know how to train other men? Right. And I would take more than both hands the men of God, where I can think of specific quotes or times they've taken it apart from me. So every time I would hear a preacher really impact me with their preaching, I'd say, hey, would you just sit down with me real quick? And I would just listen to him. And I was terrible at asking questions. Ariana was much better. In fact, I learned how to ask questions better from her. But I would just try to get around some of these great men of God. And I would pray to God, like, I want to be around these men who can help me. Because you don't know what you don't know. You have no idea what you even need at that point. And I was so overwhelmed. So I would say, take it a day at a time. I would say you've got to walk with God for yourself. I remember being in high school, just not being able to walk with God very well. It just felt shallow. I remember praying one time, like, God, I don't even know how to do this. And I remember reading a book, Discover Your Destiny by Carrie Schmidt. And in that, he talked about this walk with God that I wanted. And I remember from that, I'm like, I'm going to walk with God. And not just on my knees, because I've never been able to walk with God great on my knees. Now, I do have times of prayer where I'm on my knees, intercessory prayer for other people. But I did my best praying, get up early in the morning, going walking, at night, go walking, and just talking to God, pour out my heart. And I think that's crucial. I think it's crucial. But also, good men of God. We don't have to do this journey alone. Man, good friends going to the ministry. Get like Chris Thompson. That's true. Even find other young men going your same direction. I'm thinking Bible college. Alec Hoffmeister being good friends with Jonathan Castro, Chris Thompson. There's other young men there at the same time. Man, your peers will shape you more than you know. So find good ones.
Push you in that direction.
I mean, peer pressure's there, so find some people pressuring you towards God.
Doesn't mean things surrounding yourself with like-minded people who would help.
But people talk about this in every factor of life. If you're going to be, go into business, find other business people. If you're going to go to gym, don't go, people eating fast food all the time. Go find somebody who's working in the gym. I would say same thing. Get serious about the things of God. We need some young people passionate about excellence and pursuing the will of God and doing what it takes and overcoming. We need some tough young men of God. Constantly these Facebook posts about people being spiritually burnt out, and all that does happen. I'm not downplaying it, but spiritually burnt out and this and that and the other. I'm like, where are the young men that I read about going to the Aka Indians and being willing to die and doing all this stuff? And where are the ladies who went through these terrible camps and came out the other side? Like, and the problem is because we're looking for pastors for help. We're looking for church, and we don't have that walk with God, because that's what's going to get you through. There's been some dark days over the last 3 years. There's been some times of crying out to God when you feel like all hope is lost. There's been some times where you doubt every shred of your faith that you ever had, and you pick it back up, and it's deeper because of the God that you trusted to get you through.
And then, as you mentioned, the strength that you built in God during those times, He would give you enough strength to take you through that, and then in those difficult times, He also builds your faith, builds your trust more.
And if you're feeling burnt out, then go get a strong man of God that you can trust in. Because sometimes when you give out, you need somebody who can be the leader of you. That's why pastors are so powerful. And if you have a pastor that you feel like you can't go to, then get a better church, get a better pastor. What are you doing in a place where you don't have a spiritual leader? Get to your pastor, say, look, I've got this stuff. Now, don't go to him every day. Like, you got to get through stuff, but share with what's on your heart, what you're struggling with. He'll give you some good counsel. I've needed some hearty counsel. I've had to bring my frustrations and my hurt to some just wise men of God. I'm thinking of Pastor Adam Thompson. I'm thinking of Joel Haynes. I'm thinking of Pastor Roger Hoot, Pastor Eric Tharp. I've had some wise, great men. And I don't come up every week saying, woe is me. But there were some times when I was really going through it. I needed a man of God to help me just sort madness. And even like, here's the situation, here's the truth. I don't know how to
put them together.
I don't have the experience to put those two blocks together, but they did. And each one different things. To this day, I could think of things that they helped me with.
So it's incredible. Well, yeah, thank you so much for coming.
sir.
I don't know if you have anything.
You interviewed a
final.
talker, so this has been a long time.
No,
but
no,
we need to
this is-
close it off.
This is shorter than some of the other ones we had. But yeah, it's always good to talk and hear someone's journey and how God used them, and then also hear what is the advice for others looking on, because everybody's on that journey. That you don't just wake up one day and become a super Christian. You are on a journey, and the decisions, the choices you make every day is what is going to get you to where to fulfill what God has for you. And it's up to you if you follow God, if you submit to Him. And you might know what is 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road. You went to Guyana, you didn't know you was gonna take just couple years or whatever there, but once you put God first and you're willing to submit and follow His direction, His path, He would direct you in whatever and He has for you. And then the major thing that I have seen in bad things that happen in people's life, or very turmoil times that they have been through, I've always realized that once they respond correctly during those times, it has always been an incredible testimony for others looking on, like to help them through their struggles, help them. And you always get those testimonies of the greats, like people who going through, someone like Jamel. So many people they face such difficult
way
things.
Worse things. Way worse things.
But then it's used. God uses it for His good, I guess, to then lead people to Him through those horrific times. So it's incredible to hear that story and journey.
And I would say too, maybe one last thing before we finish up. In the last 3 months, like I said, there has been great crisis. There's been times of terrible darkness in my personal time, and times of just weeks where you feel like God's just, we're just spiritual. I don't want to say numbness, but almost numbness. You're so worn out with everything. Yeah. And I would say during those times, don't make major life corrections or changes during times of great turmoil. What I mean by that is, I had jobs offered to me and different things and opportunities to go off and do other things. I'm like, no, this is a time to just keep a hold of what I know, and take it one day at a time, because you will get through the other side. I would say the other thing is during those times of great questions, the Bible can handle the deep questions of life. I mean, I'm talking about those things that you think are just going to break you. I'm talking about those things that just challenge your faith or seem to be against your faith in such ways. The Bible's got some answers for them. True. Bible can handle them, and sometimes you need a mentor to help you find them, but they're there.
As you mentioned, one last thing is that when you're in those moments, you just hold fast to what you know and hold fast to keep going in those moments, because the devil will provide us opportunities to take you away.
And I'll say this: you're not responsible for the emotions that come during that time, and even sometimes the thoughts. You're responsible for what you do with them. Right. Because absolutely, man, the devil will send everything. You'll doubt your faith. You'll doubt God. You'll doubt everything. Yeah. But then when you find your way back to God through that, it's so much sweeter. It's so much more real. He helps you through it.
Yeah, and that goes for anybody looking on for your waiting period, for whatever it is you're waiting for the next step, waiting for marriage, waiting for a job, whatever direction God might lead you. Hold fast to what you know. Make sure you have the right mentorship. Make sure you building close to God first. That you put your relationship with God of utmost importance above whatever else that you might be praying for or working towards. That you put that first place, and then God knows the whole timeline. He will guide you according to His will, and when He has those things for you. But it's just important to, as he mentioned, to make sure you have that right foundation, make sure you have the right people around you, make sure you're going to the right authorities for advice, to build that areas in your life. So, I think that's about it. I don't know if Michael, you have anything you wanted to add as we close?
That's it.
All right. So just thank you so much, Pastor Rob, for coming on again. It's a pleasure to have you. And for those looking on, hopefully you're not looking at me specifically in my face, but
the mission conference gave him lash.
Yeah. His preaching, hit me head on. So we just thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being here with us today on episode 4. And we just thank you so much for all that God has done. And we just pray that you'll just continue to serve God in your life, continue to seek Him. And just thank you so much for joining us on this episode, and we hope that you all have a great day. Thank you so much.